with Jason Priester of allclemsontigers.com. We're continuing our conversation about Clemson recruiting. We're going to turn our attention to the offensive line. Jason, how's it going?
I am doing well, man. How about yourself?
Great. I think Clemson fans might be doing a little bit better if they could have an offensive line recruit in one of these upcoming recruiting classes. Last I've heard, Fletcher Westphal is committing on July the 10th. And Clemson's in the mix along with Arkansas, Florida, and Georgia. Guy is 6'8", 335, big-time recruit. Just any background you could give us on him or anyone else Clemson's targeting? It's not super late, but you start getting into the July and the dead period, and Clemson has none. I think folks are going to start to panic a little bit.
Yeah, if you get to the end of July and you're still sitting there at 0, it might be time to start keeping one eye on things. But offensive line recruiting has been a little bit weird in this class. I missed on the 3 in-state guys. 2 of those guys I didn't think Clemson was ever going to get anyways, but that's neither here nor there. They had 6 offensive line targets at the big official visit weekend. Come out of that thing looking like you got realistic shots with maybe 4 of them. Now we hear the end of June. Looks like maybe you got realistic shots with 2 of them. Westphal being one of those guys. I think the other one was William Satterwhite, another 4-star guy. With Westphal, he's a guy that's hard to get a good read on. I talked to him after his official visit weekend, and he raved about it. I mean, he just went on and on about how high Clemson had set the bar, and he was anxious to see if the other schools could measure up because he was so impressed by what Clemson did. He told me that President Clements was the only president that sends him mail on the recruiting trail, and he found that extremely impressive. President Clements met with those guys while they were on campus that weekend. I haven't talked with him since, so I haven't gotten to ask him if any of those other visits measured up, but you could tell by some of his reaction to the Georgia visit that he was extremely impressed. Same thing with Florida. But, I think Georgia's got guys higher on their board, and so you kind of wonder where he stands in that regard. Might be coming down to Clemson and Florida. I think Clemson's very much in the thick of it with him. Having said that, wouldn't shock me at all if he ended up with Florida, or even Georgia for that matter, even though I do think Georgia's got guys higher on their board. I'm not saying he's not a take. I just think they got guys higher on the board. But I think it wouldn't shock me if he picked Clemson either. He's just one of those guys that's hard to get a good read on. And kind of the same thing with Satterwhite. He's not set an official announcement date. He's kind of been eyeing early July, so we're getting to the end with him. Only took 2 officials, Clemson and Tennessee. That's who it's come down to. Touched base with him after the official visit weekend, told me Clemson was at the top of his list in his top 2. And, Tennessee's that other school, obviously. That was before he took his Tennessee visit. I have not seen much of anything come out about him and his Tennessee visit. Like Westphal, I've not talked to him since that visit. So we're going to have to see how this thing plays out. But if you get one of those guys, you got to feel okay. You get 2 of those, you get both those guys, you got to feel really good. You get none of those guys, though, and you're back to square one, then you're starting to, say, hey, what's going on here? The cookout's coming up in the end of July. I imagine it's going to be that last weekend in July. No matter what happens, I think the board's going to expand. Clemson wants to take 3. I don't think they've got any realistic shot with those other 4 guys that were there that first weekend in June. So the board's got to expand at some point.
Do you hit the dead period right after that cookout at the end of July?
We're in a dead period now. Come out of it that last week of July and then go back into another one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So for me, I think if you've missed on Satterwhite and Westphal or one or the other, you kind of maybe expand the board before you get to that cookout and try to get some of those new targets in town that weekend. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Or you could also bring them in the fall too, to meet earlier the better. But we'll see how it plays out. It's definitely been a weird recruiting cycle for offensive linemen because I thought Thomas Austin killed it last year. Those 3 guys they brought in last year, loved all 3 of them. I think they've all 3 got extremely high ceilings. Not quite going that way this year. I will say this. It was June before Clemson got their first offensive line commit last year. Ian Reed jumped on board first week of July. Then they got their second one, the first week of June, right after the official visit weekend. Got their second one right before the end of June when Harris Sewell jumped on board. And they were done by the 4th of July. Zachariah Owens jumped on board. These guys are announcing a little bit later. So we're just going to have to be patient, wait and see what happens with Satterwhite and Westphal before we really, really know which direction things are going to go.
Yeah, and offensive line recruiting is a little weird in that I would relate it to pro sports drafts. Quarterback, wide receiver, those type positions. Maybe they're more like, so let's say, the NFL or NBA draft, where it's certainly not a sure thing, but there's some direction there. Whereas with offensive line recruiting, there's just so much more randomness, so much more time to develop. It's more like the Major League Baseball draft, where yes, the first overall pick's better than the 10th round guy, but it's really all over the place. Jason, I want to ask you one more question about offensive line. Before I do, just folks, if you're enjoying this video, please like it. Please subscribe to this channel. We're really trying to grow it, and I'd appreciate it if you could do that. Jason, one last question for you, and it is not on a recruit, but a guy who was a huge recruit and now enters his third year with the program is Tristan Leigh. I was impressed by him in the spring game. Others were not. And I think his potential to start at left tackle could be critical, because if he starts at left tackle, you could have the other 4 returning starters just play their positions. Whereas if he cannot start for some reason and they say move Marcus Tate, now you've got Marcus Tate moving to a new position. Then you got to insert someone else new. And that shuffling, in my opinion, has been really detrimental over the years. So I'd love to be able to bring back 4 guys in the same position. Any early thoughts or early chatter about Tristan Leigh?
I thought he was up and down in the spring game. I didn't think he was terrible. I didn't think he was great. I thought he showed flashes of what he can be. And then I thought he had his moments where he had some mistakes, but he's still very inexperienced, hasn't played a ton. I agree. I think him being able to be plugged in there at left tackle, I think that's critical. I think he needs to step up. I got to talk with him for a minute after the Orange Bowl. Told me he was ready, that he has been biding his time. He's been patient. He learned a lot from Jordan McFadden. He thinks he is ready to take that next step and be the guy. It's easy to say that. Well, we'll see if he can do it. As far as the chatter, I haven't really heard anything, but we'll see once fall camp gets kicked off here in a few weeks. I absolutely agree, though, that it's going to be critical to how it plays out along that offensive line, because you don't want to. I think they're trying to get away from doing all that shuffling, all that. Not saying they're not doing any cross training now, because we know they do. I just don't think it's to the point they were doing it under Robbie Caldwell. I don't think they do it as much as they were. I think they want to have things a little more settled than they have been in the past. And if you can slide Tristan Leigh into that spot at left tackle, that makes you as settled as you possibly can be, and you don't have to upset the apple cart too much at the other positions.
Yeah, they always said we want the best 5. I don't necessarily care about the best 5. I want the best unit. And however, I don't care having the best 5 individual players. Give me the best offensive line unit. Jason, thank you so much for joining. I know Jason's going to be right back with us to talk defense, so be sure to check our other videos and catch him there.